Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Am I the A-Hole? So I'm gonna take a page from the PewDiePie handbook and I'm gonna show you my graph of how much of my content is watched by people who are unsubscribed. That's close to 75%. That means that 3 out of 4 people that watch these videos aren't part of our community yet. So please, help me flip those numbers by subscribing. Alright, now let's get back to the story. This one's from user AITA Throwing. Am I the a-hole for trying to send my deaf daughter to a school that won't hire an interpreter? So, my 34 female daughter, 6 female, is deaf. We adopted her 3 years ago from China. When she first came home, we tried to teach her both sign and speech, but it was clear ASL, American Sign Language, was the best form of communication for her. We hadn't put her in preschool because she didn't have much communication, but she started kindergarten this year. There is a private school that all my other kids and my sister's kids go to. She had to take a test to get in and passed, but they said that because there was a deaf school within an hour of where we live, they wouldn't provide any accommodations. So either we have to pay for an interpreter or send her to the deaf school. But the deaf school we live near is only for children with hearing aids and cochlear implants, and teaches speech and has actually banned sign language. I think speech can definitely help deaf children, but it depends on the individual child. Some speak, some sign, some do both. But my daughter communicates best with sign language, which is why we don't want to send her there. Since this is a private school, I don't think they have to follow the disability guidelines that public schools do. Currently, my daughter is doing online school at the local public school, who have provided an interpreter, but the education there is horrible. I sent my oldest son there in kindergarten and first grade, and he never learned anything. I'm aware that you don't learn much in kindergarten and first grade, but they didn't even teach them how to read. I had to do that myself. Another reason I want to send her to the private school is because from pre-kinder and up, the kids can choose to learn ASL, Spanish, or French, so she may be able to communicate with some other kids there. She has had a few playdates with other kids in the area who go there and took ASL, and they were able to communicate pretty well, whereas in the public school, she would be completely isolated and only be able to communicate with the interpreter. I have been constantly emailing with this private school trying to see if there is any other way to get my daughter in without having to pay for the interpreter myself. My brother thinks that if the school doesn't want her, why should I keep pushing for her to get in? But I just want the best education possible for my daughter, and I want my daughter to be able to be social and make friends. Am I the a-hole? Should I just let it go and keep her in public school, or should I keep trying to get my daughter into this school? The judgment is not the a-hole. Now let's take a look at the top comments. Cat-Eyed Troll says, private schools are still required to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. They must provide auxiliary aid within reason for deaf or hard of hearing students. The costs for providing auxiliary aids and services may not be imposed upon the individual with a disability. Please see here for a breakdown of what is expected of private schools under ADA. They cannot tell you that they will not provide this aid. The commenter shares a link. Dragon Unicorn 77 says, your daughter deserves and requires an interpreter. If you want her to go to the better school, invest in the interpreter. Your local deaf school is a joke. Please involve her in deaf culture. It's rich and her birthright. OP responds, I try my best. I'm hard of hearing, 75 dB bilaterally, and never even knew what deaf culture was until I was a teenager. Right now, sending her to school without an interpreter is completely not an option. We send her to deaf camp and go to deaf events like signing Starbucks and things like that. We may be able to move to Greenville, South Carolina in a few years because of my husband's job, which is in the same county as the South Carolina School for the Deaf. So in that case, she would be able to go there, but she still has kindergarten and first grade left. Gimper says, for the love of God, do not send her to the deaf school. It sounds more like a hearing assimilation school and could potentially really stunt her social and linguistic development. What you should do is contact a lawyer who specializes in providing accommodations to children with different and special needs. because a private school should not be able to deny an interpreter to a student who needs one. And to the person replying to everyone about schools not having to assist students outside of their district, private schools do not have districts. That's the whole point. OP responds, yes, that deaf school is completely off the table. As well as the people suggesting I would send my daughter to school without an interpreter. I would never do that. Well, OP, we definitely have some things clear. You're never going to send your daughter to the deaf school that's close to your home, and never going without an interpreter, so that's good. Now, what this last commenter said, I think hits the spot. You should contact a lawyer that specializes in these cases. Now, I don't know anything about US law or the state that you live in. However, what they say there, that private schools do not have districts, that helps a lot. So hopefully you do find a lawyer that helps you move this whole thing forward. What about you guys? What do you think OP should do? In the meantime, how about we move on with the update to see what happened next? Thank you all for your advice on my last post. I wasn't aware of all the laws about this kind of thing. For those of you who didn't read the original post, basically my 6-year-old is deaf and communicates using American Sign Language. There is a public school near us, but it's very bad and the whole district has a rating of 1.5 out of 5 stars. All of our other children go to a private school near us, but the private school said they wouldn't pay for an interpreter because there is a deaf school in our county. But the deaf school only teaches speech and no sign language, so we decided not to send her there. We also wanted her to go to the private school because there was a language option for ASL, so she may be able to communicate with other classmates. But my brother said that we shouldn't push trying to get her in. If the school doesn't want her, we should just give up. Most people said to hire a lawyer. My husband decided to contact his brother, who is a disability lawyer. Although he specializes in wheelchair accessibility, he was willing to take our case. We discussed the situation over the phone with him, and then he reached out to the private school. He emailed back and forth with the school. We're not sure what was said exactly, but by the end of it, not only did the school agree to pay for the interpreter, but they also provided a free scholarship and let us request which teacher she gets, which they didn't let us do for any of our other kids. There is a kindergarten teacher who knows some ASL, so we chose to be in her class. I'm not sure exactly why they did this, but I think it's probably because denying entry to a kindergarten just because she's deaf would not look so good if other people found out, but I'm not complaining. She started 2 weeks ago and loves it. They are doing hybrid. She is able to make friends and talk to other kids, though in kind of broken sign language. Her interpreter is very nice and will update us on how she did every day, unlike the interpreter she had when she was in public school. Her teacher also tried to sign when she's speaking as much as possible, and so do some of the kids. Overall, I'm so happy this happened, and I wouldn't have known there was anything I could do about it until I asked on here. So thank you all who replied to the original post and told me they do have to provide an interpreter for her. OP's edit. To everyone concerned as to why my brother-in-law is a disability lawyer, but I came to Reddit first. We barely talk to brother-in-law. He's my husband's half-brother, and there is a 16-year age gap, so they aren't close. And at the time when I first posted, I didn't think I could do anything legally. I talked about why in the comments, so I didn't even think of talking to my brother-in-law. I was just concerned if I was being too pushy, which is why I came to this sub rather than legal advice. Hope that clears some things up. Well, OP, this is fantastic news. You pushed the right buttons with your brother-in-law, or he did, in order to get not only that they would pay for the interpreter, but you got a scholarship for your kid. That's fantastic. I'm guessing you're right about your assumption as to why they did all that. I would assume that you could make a Facebook post about this, or a tweet, or an Instagram story, and it would probably blow up because they were treating you very unfairly. So I'm guessing they were covering their butt by doing this. Now, regardless of everything that happened and how things played out, the good thing is that your daughter is now in the school that you want and she is getting the education and the help that she needs. So that's the best outcome possible. So all that there's left to say, OP, is hopefully your daughter will continue to enjoy school not just this year, but all the years that come, and she keeps getting this help. All the best, OP. Take care. And that's it for this video. I truly hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you feel like chatting with others from this community, you can always join my Discord server and check out my subreddit. I'll leave links in the description. And having said all that, I will see you guys in the next video.